What is going on, YouTube people? Neo Cards and Comics here for the weekly sports card market update. I shouldn't say big week in news. Most of the news we kind of hit on in yesterday's video with the whole dibs nonsense and kind of how the banking situation has kind of rippled itself out into some various payment processors and how that's affected some hobby-related companies. Individual card sales, not so much, but things tangential to the sports card world. Alt being a buying and selling platform, Dibs fractional company, NBA Top Shot not really tangentially associated with. I know a lot of people from the sports card world dip their toes in, and kind of the same thing with Candy Digital. We'll see if there's any more ripples from all this shenanigans in the real world, the damn real world, coming in and affecting our expensive cardboard. I don't like it. It's supposed to be two separate things, and it wants to creep its way on in. The other thing that I kind of noticed popping around the old social media sphere was some high-end auctions got kind of murdered again. News at 11. These cards keep coming up for sale that haven't sold since the peak, and they're going down a lot from peak pricing. I don't know why anyone's really surprised by this. And I don't really know how much it trickles down into the, normal sphere of cards, let's say sub $1,000. We're still not seeing massive drops on stuff just out of nowhere. Like most of the stuff that's dropping kind of makes sense. We'll cover a couple things here in today's video that have been slowly trickling down over the last couple of weeks. But for the most part, things seem stable-ish. Obviously, that could change on a dime. And obviously, some things are still creeping down. Some things are going up. But just as a macro level, it feels like we're in a fairly okay spot at the moment. Some wax prices are creeping up. Some are creeping down. Justifiably so. We'll talk about that. The other kind of thing that was going on this weekend show-wise, which I haven't heard anything from it. I forgot to talk to at least one of the dealers that I know that was set up there. But if anyone was in attendance, feel free to fire off thoughts and opinions in the comments down below. This past weekend, or this weekend currently, because it's Sunday only, was the Chicago Sports Spectacular, which I know is a pretty popular show. I've never been to that one. It's one that's always been kind of on my radar. And I may have considered going to it this time around except for the Philly show just happened. So it's really tough for me to travel multiple weekends in a row, and I had the Shipshawana show, then the Philly show, and then this weekend was the Chicago show, and then in a week or two is Chantilly and also the Mint. I am not, as of the moment, planning on attending either one of those. I don't have a travel show on my radar. There may be a larger regional show I might go to. There is a show in Washington, PA, I believe, the southwest side of Pittsburgh, coming up. It might be next weekend that was put on my radar that I might look at. So we'll kind of see how that plays out. I need to double check the dates on that. But I think that one's supposed to be like 150 to 180 tables, somewhere in that range. So I may make the run down to that one. I'll see what's going on that weekend. It's about a 2-hour drive from my location. But yeah, if anyone was at the Chicago show, feel free to drop thoughts, opinions, comments. If you were set up, if you were just walking around, feel free to let us know a vibe check in the comments down below. That's pretty much the major stuff kind of floating around the news sphere. We've kind of been in a quiet period, honestly, lately. I mean, the banking stuff was kind of the biggest thing to kind of shake the snow globe. But generally speaking, it's been, pretty low key lately in the old news front. We'll have whatever Topps major announcement is regarding like product of the century or whatever they were teasing at the Top show. That should be coming up pretty soon. We're probably 2 weeks away from a new PSA grading special, but kind of status quo in the old world of sports cards. It's kind of nice. It just allows you to be like, hey, I could just focus on actual, cards. What do you know? So with that being said, let's go ahead and dive into some more market chit chat, charts and graphs, etc. We'll be using market movers for most of this. Link in the description down below. If you want your own charts and graphs, you can check out the first month for just $1. Let's kick things off with football. Prism football, obviously Prism release week. We talked about that in a video earlier this week on how the pricing just doesn't make sense on those boxes versus what you get out of them, which is most wax, to be fair. But we've talked about this before. There just seems to be this mismatch of alignment in pricing between Topps products and Fanatics products. Or I'm sorry, Topps/Fanatics products and Panini products. And I'm going to use Prism as an example. Currently, Prism prices do continue to slide. We're seeing hobby boxes now dip down into the $630, $620 range. I wouldn't be surprised if they go under $600, to be quite honest, if not even lower. But when you compare that to, and we don't have a current one right now, but like a Topps Chrome hobby box for baseball, and to me, those two things are kind of similar. Prism is the flagship brand of Panini. Topps Chrome, in my opinion, is the flagship brand of Topps. I know a lot of people will cite Series 1, but from a more, I guess, investor, air quotes, flipper, whatever you want to call it, side of things, they lean more towards the shiny. It's where you're going to get a lot of your refractors, the base cards, whatever. We don't have pricing for what 2023 looks like yet, but I can guarantee you it won't be $500 or $600. It'll probably be $100 to $200. And we continue to see this over and over again, where the Panini, specifically basketball and football prices, just feel out of whack compared to the baseball prices. And that makes a difference. I talked about it when we were ripping 2022 Topps Update hangers, and we'll talk about 2022 Update here in a minute. Those are $15 to $20. They're creeping up a little bit in price now, but at the time, $15 to $20, and you had a pretty decent shot of hitting something good. Now, the checklist was really good. That helped for sure. But your downside risk was really low. Even on a jumbo box at around, when that stuff came out, it was around $200. $200 for a jumbo hobby box with a guaranteed auto and, a decent amount of parallels and some minor hits. Even if you whiff on something like that, it feels a hell of a lot better because you didn't spend $200 or you didn't spend $600 on a hobby box. You spent $200. And now that's a paper product versus Chrome. I get that. We'll see what 2023 Topps Chrome prices come out like out of the gate for boxes, but there still seems to be this misalignment. But the big thing here is Prism Football does continue to trend downwards. This stuff was initially pre-ordered at $750 to $800. Dipped down to under 700 around release day, and now we're already seeing it down to the low sixes, 620, 625, 630. We're only a couple days in, and it's already down that far. My guess is, like I said, I think this thing dips into the 500s and maybe even lower than that. The value is just not there. The checklist is so weak. I pulled it up in Market Movers. I just pulled raw base just because it's fresh new product. We still don't have a ton of sales data on some of the parallels yet. Maybe next week we'll look at silvers. But the purpose of this isn't so much how much an individual card's selling for. I was more curious on how the secondary market is ranking the players from the class, as in who's selling for the most. I don't necessarily care what they're selling for, because let's be honest, this is release week. Most of these prices are going to continue to come down over time the further we get away from release week, as more and more of this stuff gets ripped. As of right now, Brock Purdy is the leader in the clubhouse. A lot of people made jokes in the comments of the Prism video. It's kind of sad when the number one selling player from the class has a busted up arm, is going to be out for most of the summer rehabbing, and may not even be the team's starting quarterback. And that's the number one seller from the product. Pretty much sums up the checklist. Beyond him, we have Kenny Pickett coming in at number 2 slot. Very close with Isaiah Pacheco. Pretty bad when a running back from the Chiefs is very close in pricing to a quarterback. I don't expect that to hold. Once again, I don't want to get too much into the weeds on individual pricing here. Just more the tiers. So we have Purdy in a tier by himself, then Pickett and Pacheco, and then we drop down from there to Sam Howell, Garrett Wilson, Jamison Williams, Hutchinson, Kenneth Walker, Olave, and Watson, kind of all within a few bucks of each other, and then Desmond Ridder and Sauce Gardner kind of rounding out that class. And then, we get down to the George Pickens, Drake London's, a lot of wide receivers in this class. Breece Hall, popular name. But you could see it thins out real quick. And I would argue it's thin at the top as well. So we'll see how this product continues to age. I do have a feeling those hobby boxes continue to come down. I don't know what price point they would have to be at for me to feel comfortable ripping one. even at $300 a box, $350 a box, honestly, I'd rather rip a box of Fleer Ultra Avengers than a box of Prism Football. At least the base set's semi worth something out of a product like that. It's just so Prism is just so watered down now. And the biggest problem is the checklist. It's rough. It just is what it is. It's a bad draft class. My hope is, I doubt that they will. We'll see. We were talking about this on maybe Discord. I think on my Discord. I'm in too many different conversations in too many different places. We were talking about hopefully they don't overprint it and they could kind of see like, hey, this is a weaker draft class. We should probably not print this to the moon because it's just going to sit anyway. We'll see how retail does. I can't imagine retail of this getting gobbled up. It is football. People like to degenerate gamble on this stuff, but there needs to be a hit in there to go after, and I'm just not seeing it with football. So we'll continue to monitor Prism prices. I think it's kind of fascinating because this is kind of a dud class. Next year looks like it could be a pretty good class. It looks like we have a bunch of quarterbacks going off at the top. That's always going to juice a class. And this upcoming, well, it hasn't, not the one that hasn't released yet, 2022 Prism Basketball with Banchero and Chet and those guys, that's probably going to be a weaker NBA product too. Paolo's pretty good rather. Jabari Smith's been playing a little bit better lately, but he hasn't had that great of the year. Chet's hurt. Kind of watered down. That one could potentially be a weak product as well. And then you go into 2023, that's a completely different story. Now we're talking Victor Wembanyama hype meter. We're talking Scoot Henderson. We're talking about the guy from Alabama if he stays out of jail. 2023 basketball is going to be a very hot product across the board. Whether you believe the hype or not, doesn't matter. It's going to be hyped. So maybe they get a good run with 2023 product. We shall see. Let's flip over and talk about baseball. We kind of hinted about this a little bit. I was curious. I just wanted to check in on wax pricing on 2023 Series 1 and 2022 Topps Update, the two most recent mainline releases. There's been a bunch of ancillary releases. Series 1, we're going back basically its entire history since being on the market. I put in 90 days. It hasn't even been out 90 days. It's only been out about a month. Just to see how it has aged already. Given the narrative about Series 1 where jumbos are loaded, hobby's fine, and retail is watered down, the market has played itself out that way as well. Jumbo boxes came out at around $180. I got some even cheaper than that off the Fanatics website during that sale. They're currently flirting with the $240-ish price range. That's a 35% increase. Series 1 hobby, regular hobby, non the jumbos, those have basically stayed completely flat, sitting at about $80 a box, which is what the release point was. And I believe, last I checked, they're still sitting on Topps and Fanatics website for, I think, $89. So you kind of have a ceiling there when I could just go onto a website and buy them for less than that. I always laugh when dealers are higher than what I could just literally go on Topps' website and buy them for. That always makes me giggle when I see pricing like that. And then hanger boxes, the narrative was 2022 hangers are bangers. That doesn't seem to be the case this year. Though I had a positive experience with hangers, sample size of 2. One was a dud. One was pretty solid. I hit that Trout Red Rainbow foil that was numbered. Obviously, that's not going to happen most times. Those are going for like $8-9. That's less than what you can get them for in retail. I know when I bought mine at the show, I got them for $10 a piece. That's cheaper than what I could get them for in retail. So it looks like dealers and vendors or whatever are basically just kind of moving off these things at probably what their cost is, just to maintain their allocations. They have to kind of take some of this stuff on, most likely, to get the good product. They're a good fun rip. They're a good cheap rip. Listen, if you got kids or something like that and you want to spend $10 on something for them to open up, there's worse things you could do. Every once in a while, you'll strike gold and hit a winner on the lottery ticket. That Trout Red Rainbow foil, I think I ended up selling for $50. Someone binned it at 50. So that was $20 in hangers, and I sold a $50 trout off of it. Once again, that's an extreme outlier. That is not typical, but the hits are there. It's going to be harder to hit something like that. But in an $8 price point, you shouldn't expect to hit, monsters every other hanger box. Checklist, pretty solid in Series 1. Not as good as 2022, obviously, but a solid enough product. Speaking of 22, let's kind of take a peek at that. Some interesting price movements on this as this product has aged a little bit and has kind of moved off of the retail floor for hangers and then just becoming less and less abundant in the natural environment. Now, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of this printed, but you could definitely see it is starting to kind of dry up a little bit. Hanger boxes, can't find them in stores anymore. I haven't seen them in a couple of months. Those are now regularly going for $25 a pop on eBay. Those were originally $12 to $14, depending on what retail outlet you purchased them at. Those are up to $25. That's an 80% increase on 2022 update. Regular hobby boxes. Now remember, this product is not structured like Series 1. So the hangers did have bangers. You could pull pretty good stuff out of the hangers. And then the hobby and the jumbo were both very solid, with not one favoring another one like with 23. Update hobby boxes are up about 5-7%, up to 131, depending on what you bought at, where you got in at. And then update jumbos are flirting with $270 to $300 a box. Now the last sale was $270, but that one was kind of an outlier from where the most recent couple had been at, closer to that $300 price point. I looked at current listings. There was nothing listed at $270, and there was one at auction that was already a couple bucks over $270. So we'll just call it between $270 and $300 for a update series, or a Topps update jumbo hobby box. So those continue to age pretty well. We'll see what the ceiling looks like on those. A lot of it will depend on what happens once April 1st rolls around and these guys start hitting the ball for real. I was also curious about the singles market. For the purposes of this, I pulled up golds out of, whatever the year is. So 2022 is out of 2022. J-Rod leads the way, and this is raw, by the way. I didn't include any graded because I wanted to look at Series 1 from 2023, and that stuff really hasn't hit PSA pop reports yet. There's some SGC stuff, obviously, but I just wanted to look at raw to keep it fairly consistent. So you have J-Rod in a tier of his own, Witt in a tier of his own, and then basically everyone else kind of grouped together from that class. But you're looking at 270 for J-Rod, 120 for Witt. If you compare that to 23, the top of the class is Michael Harris at only 90, and then Gunnar Henderson at 80, followed by Rushman at 75. So you kind of have one main tier in 2023 with Harris, Henderson, and Rushman. Then you kind of have a big gap there, and it splits into another tier with like Vargas, Casas, Batty, Riley Green, Grissom, Hunter Brown. There's a big group of guys here in that $20 to $30 range before you kind of drop into the more flyer range of, like Nolan Gorman, Oscar Gonzalez. What we even see Trout sitting here, Oswaldo Perez. So you can kind of see the differences between 22 and 23. 23 not as top heavy, but you kind of have three guys that are all pretty good in Henderson, Harrison, Rushman, versus 22, where it's J-Rod by a mile, then Witt kind of in the middle, and then a big drop off to the next tier of players. So we'll see how pricing filters out for this stuff. Like I said, baseball has continued to remain pretty hot and a very in-demand, very liquid marketplace at the moment. Don't forget, once the season starts and these guys stop living up to expectations, prices will probably start to come down. That is what we typically see. The guys that have a lot baked into their pricing aren't going to live up to the lofty expectations that we all put upon them, and their prices are going to come down. Your best bet is these guys down at the bottom that are $2, $5, $10. If you got a gut feeling on someone, take a gamble, pick up some of those guys because there's not a lot of expectations on them. So if they come out of the gates hot, their stuff will fly up more so than these guys up towards the top. It's going to be really hard for Harris, for example, to retain his value. Even if he comes out with a strong start, it's going to be trickier for him to hold at $90 versus, let's say Oscar Gonzalez from my Cleveland Indians comes out and just smashes the ball. Now, he hasn't really had a great spring, but let's just say he comes out on a monster tear. That $5 gold, it's going to be a lot easier for that $5 gold to go to $20 than it is for the Harris to go from 90 to, let's say, even 110, 120, even with a hot start. Just kind of always keep that in mind. Let's move on and finish up a little bit of basketball. Some interesting market movements over the last couple weeks on a couple guys. The big one that I want to talk about is LeBron. He broke the scoring record a couple of weeks, or almost like a month and a half ago now, about 6 weeks ago, beginning of February, I believe that was. Unfortunately, right after that, he got hurt, basically probably out for most of, if not all, the regular season, maybe come back for the playoffs. What I was curious about is how his pricing has kind of moved since breaking the record. So prior to, this is his PSA 10 Topps Chrome. Very liquid card, moves all the time. There's plenty of sales on this, so it makes it good for getting an overall LeBron market vibe. For most of December and January, this card was selling for $5K to like just barely over $6K. The hype started to build about LeBron breaking the record, and then we saw it creep up. There's one way over $6K. Here's one over $7K. 7K, and then we really kind of jumped around here. 8K, 7K, in that basically 7 to 8K range here, around when he was getting very close to the record. Here's January 28th. Here's where he broke the record on the 7th/8th. I forget the exact day, but it was right around here. So you could see that excitement there in the anticipation of the event. The event happens, and then he nosedives, starts to tick back up again, and then he got hurt and has slowly down ticked since. And you can see he's all the way back down to that, last couple sales, 5.7, 5.8, and then a 5.1 with a new low over the last, what I'll pull here, 90 days. We've talked about this a million times. Now, you get the injury, that probably did not help things, but I think even if he was still playing, we probably would have seen similar movement. The best time to sell is prior to the event. Sell here, not after. If you really want to maximize your short-term profits, sell leading up, not after. This is just one of a number of examples that we could talk about that this almost always plays out like this. The only exception to this rule that I could remember in recent memory was when Brady won his 6th. His prices held afterwards. Now, they eventually returned, but that was more due to macroeconomics than anything else. But almost always, this is the way this stuff plays out. Teapot talked about this in his Saturday video when he was talking about Bowman prospects. If you look over and over and over again, 9 times out of 10, the best time to sell the prospect is right at or right before the call up. So in a lot of guys' cases, that's peak value. Is there going to be some outliers to that? Are you going to have a Trout that, obviously you could, buy a new house off of if you held his first Bowman autos or whatever? Sure. But what are the chances of that actually happening? Just kind of always keep that in mind. Sell before the actual event is, generally speaking, the better play than wait until after. Next up, let's take a little peek at Ja and Zion. They have both kind of been in the news. We've kind of been checking in on their prices the last few weeks here on and off. Ja looks like he may get back on the court this upcoming week with his air quotes 8-game suspension that he got for his little run of tomfoolery, shall we call it. His silver prism over the last, I went from January 1st on this, since the beginning of the year is down 26%. His fellow running mate, Zion, down 25% as he continues to be out injured. I would be surprised if we see him the rest of this year. So his stuff's probably going to continue to trend down. If Ja gets back on the court and plays well and has some big playoff moments, I will be interested to see if these guys do kind of separate again. For a while, Ja had overtaken Zion and was selling for a decent margin better. This nonsense happened. They have kind of met back again and kind of combined prices almost. We'll see if they end up splitting apart again or kind of how things play out. Hopefully Ja hits the ground running. Stupid decisions aside, the guy is fun to watch play on the basketball court. So Zion, the problem is that Zion has trouble getting on the actual basketball court. Last but not least, one that has actually performed pretty well this year, and a lot of it has kind of kicked up lately. I kind of think people are sleeping on the Kings a little bit. They are the 2 seed. They have played fantastic all year long. Fox has been absolutely amazing. So I was kind of curious what his prices have been doing. Silver Prism and Optic Hollow, PSA 10. I went back to October 1st on this one, so that's the lead up to the season. PSA 10's up 22% from 160 to 200, and his Optic Hollow is up from $60 to 100, a 75% increase, or $45 on that. And you can see a lot of that actually kind of happened in the last 90 days. Like his stuff actually dipped down a little bit in season. Some silvers went for 140. Here's one that went for 115, and now those are all the way up to $200. And that was with a sale dipping down. You know, prior to that, there was some up in the 225, 250 range before this last one at dead 200. Same thing with the Optic Hollow. At one point in time during the season, $40, $55. Here's one at $50, and now we're creeping up towards 100. Like I said, Fox has been fantastic this year. The Kings have been a really fun story. No one's taking them serious in the playoffs. I could see why. You know, these young teams usually don't perform well their first year in. Now, Fox and Sabonis aren't super young. I mean, they're young, but they're not like the Cavs, for example, where it's Garland, Mobley, Allen, and Mitchell. You know, Mitchell has some playoff experience there, but, you know, Garland and Mobley are puppies, basically, when it comes to NBA playoff experience. The Kings, you know, they're a little bit older. Fox, Sabonis leading that team. Harrison Barnes obviously has playoff experience. I'm not going to lie, depending on who they match up with, I'll be taking a hard look at what their future odds look like and what their series odds look like for depending on who they play, because they're going to keep getting disrespected. I think they're going to be pretty good. I think they win at least a round and give a team a hell of a battle in the second round for sure, depending on how the matchups go. So that's all I got for you boys and girls today. We will catch you on the next one. Continue to enjoy the NCAA tournament. We had the big 16 seed over a 1, basically causing chaos in brackets, if that's your thing. Have a good week. We will catch you guys and girls on the next one. Peace.